you?
Fadzai.
A doppelganger. A witch.
A hybrid.
A werewolf.
I'm a vampire.
Welcome to the Gilbert Journals, the series where we discuss the lore of the Vampire Diaries universe. I'm Sandile.
And I'm Fadzai.
Ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between and outside. We promised it to you months ago, and now it is here. The sign was pointed to on the wall. We're walking through the entrance of the wrestling arena. It's Daggerwatch, baby! For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, honestly, that's fine, because I think we mentioned it in one episode, and I don't think it was a main episode. So today, we are talking about the fateful, the magical, the white oak ash daggers that make many an appearance throughout the Vampire Diaries universe, and have been a question of some confusion, some frustration, some debate between the two of us, and I must assume other people who are fixated on details as we are. So we thought we would track the existence of these daggers throughout history. There were two ways I was thinking about when I was like, we're gonna do this. The first being chronologically in terms of the history, like starting way back 1,000 years ago when they were created. But I thought it's more fun to follow them, as we do with most of the episodes, in appearance on the show, just so we can all have some fun keeping track of how these things are flowing. So I not challenge necessarily, because I do not think it'll be a challenge for you, Fadzai. I know you have a mental map already, but I invite you to keep track on your own end of how this stuff is going to be playing out.
I'll try. Lord knows I've been trying for years.
So we are starting in season 2, episode 14 and 15 broadly. That's where this sort of happens. The Mystic Falls gang is in the middle of their Elena's the doppelganger, Klaus is coming to get her, Elijah is already here era. They have called Isabel, because Isabel Fleming, Elena's biological mother, of course, is known for being able to get information and get like strange things that they can use to maybe fight against this threat. Instead of getting to Isabel, though, they get to John. Assumedly, Isabel has sent John. John rocks up on their doorstep and is like, I'm here to help. Look what I've got. It's this dagger and this little glass jar of ashes. White oak ashes, to be specific. And if you dip this dagger in this and you stab an original that otherwise cannot die except to white oak, which we don't have. And also we don't know about, right? They don't know about a white oak stake to the chest.
They don't know, yes. All they are told is that the ashes in this jar come from an ancient white oak tree that dates back to the inception of the originals themselves.
There we go.
They don't explain that tree's wood could kill them.
So, the originals who were heretofore unkillable, this dagger, if you plunge it into the heart of an original, I believe John says it will kill them. So,
yes.
He hands this dagger to Damon. And so that's the first transfer. This is dagger number 1 that Isabel has given to John, and then John has given to Damon. Dagger 1 is with Damon. Damon and Alaric, well, Damon largely, who ropes in Alaric, invites Elijah to this dinner where they're trying to break bread and discuss options on the table as to how they're going to deal with the drama going on. But really, it's to lure Elijah in so that Damon can then dagger him. Separately, Elena and Stefan are off at a cabin, and she's reading from old Johnny G, Jonathan Gilbert the Elder's diary about the originals. And she starts reading about these daggers that were supposedly created, assumedly by the witches broadly they've been speaking about, who supposedly cursed Klaus. And apparently these daggers were crafted in such a way, because the originals, quote, believed in honor or whatever. All nonsense that will cease to make sense when you actually meet them. That they could not use the daggers against each other because it would kill both the vampire being stabbed by it and the vampire holding it. Only a human could wield the dagger. So They transmit this information to Damon and Rick, and so it is Rick who finally takes the dagger and stabs Elijah with it. And so dagger 1 is now in Elijah's chest.
Well,
Then, of course,
stabbed in his back and then pulled out, as you do.
as you do when you kill somebody. Elena then learns that the description of the dagger is that as long as you leave the dagger buried in the original's chest, they're effectively dead. And then they transmit that information and the gang runs, but Elijah's already escaped. He comes over to Elena's cabin. She strong arms him, masterminds him, and she's the one to dagger him at the end. And then they put him in the Salvatore cellar, and dagger number 1 is in Elijah's chest. So, that's episode 14, episode 15. Episode 19 of the same season is when Elena, following some events, you can go back to the Elena episode to learn about, she has decided to undagger Elijah and make a deal with him, a new deal. She then gives Elijah this dagger as a sign of trust, which Elijah takes and keeps with him for the rest of the season, the remaining 3 episodes. Here's the first question mark on my little map here.
Yes, I've been waiting.
So, in the finale, Elijah double crosses the Mystic Falls gang and escapes with Klaus, duped into believing Klaus is going to reunite him with the rest of their family that Klaus has apparently got stashed away somewhere. When Elijah starts asking him questions, because Klaus has done his little werewolf run, Klaus is like, yeah, I'll reunite you with our family. Dagger into the chest. The question mark is this a second dagger, or is this the same dagger Elijah had that he somehow appropriated? As far as I can tell, within the Vampire Diaries, that question is never answered.
Not once. At face value, you would have to assume this is another dagger.
Yes.
That Klaus took into Alaric's house when he decided to, set up shop there and said, I'm just going to keep this handy so that when I run into Elijah, who I know is in this town working with my enemies, I can dagger him and put him down. And then he lures Elijah in and daggers him. The only problem is that if that is true, the dagger that Elena gives to Elijah ceases to exist after season 2.
Sure does.
It goes nowhere. It never shows up.
And we will get into, because obviously there's more than one dagger. There's a bunch of these daggers. Once we get to the end of this, you will see that that is in fact true. That dagger, we're in a superposition right now where this dagger both exists and doesn't exist. But we'll see. So that's where we end off season 2. Either with 1 dagger or 2. We know where dagger 1 is, and then this question mark dagger is also conditionally in the same place.
If somehow Klaus did acquire the dagger that Elijah, I would have hoped, had hidden away somewhere.
Right.
Then I guess you could hand wave it and say he used his witch to do a locator spell and find the dagger, and then he stole it when Elijah wasn't looking. There was a lot going on in those last 2 episodes. But
the only summation of that is that Elijah's stupid to not just have it on him at all times, which I refuse to accept.
I guess if you have it on you, it can be grabbed and used against you, which is exactly how Cole meets his end with the White Oak Stake in season 4.
True that. Klaus is his weakness, so I'd believe that at least. But that's where we end season 2, with 1 and or 2 daggers. Season 3, episode 3. We learn, in fact, that Klaus has a bunch of siblings sitting in coffins that are all daggered. We don't necessarily see the count. We just see a bunch of coffins sitting in a room. And in this episode, he undaggers Rebecca because he needs information from Rebecca. So I've written this as dagger number 2, superpositional dagger notwithstanding. Dagger number 2 is removed from Rebecca's chest by Klaus, and therefore is in Klaus's possession. For a hot second there, she uses it to stab him, but it's not going to kill Klaus because the daggers don't work on Klaus. So, assumedly, he has that with him still. Episode 9 of season 3, Michael is in the picture. They are orchestrating a plan to fool Klaus into thinking they've killed Michael so they can lure him in and Michael can kill him with a white oak stake that he's brought. When they realize he will not believe it unless Michael's actually dead, Michael's like, then I shall be dead. And then pulls out a dagger with a jar of white oak ashes. This is dagger number 3. I knew in the back of my head, you probably also didn't know about that. That was new information to me. Michael pulls out his
had a
own
dagger.
Where did Michael get this dagger? Question mark.
Michael, when he was revived reluctantly by Catherine, woke up and went to find Elijah's hidden dagger.
Yeah, that's the
From
only
season
explanation. He grabbed the superpositional dagger. Michael gives this dagger to Elena. Elena uses it to dagger Michael. Elena then later removes it from Michael. And then Elena, halfway through the episode, daggers Rebecca with it. In episode 10, Rebecca they put in the Salvatore cellar. After Klaus he definitely tries to kill Jeremy. He has his hybrid Tony try to kill him, and Rick gets all messed up. Elena makes a deal with Klaus. She returns Rebecca's body to him, along with the dagger in her back, in exchange for Jeremy's safety. Klaus removes the dagger from her, and then Elena's like, oh, I told her you killed your mom. And she's probably going to be upset at you about that. And so Klaus puts the dagger back.
He puts it in her chest this time so that he can face her upright when he puts her in the coffin.
So she can have a little bit of dignity, you know? He's not a monster. Dagger 3 is now also with Klaus. This is the dagger that came from Michael. Klaus now has either 2 or 3 daggers. Episode 12 is when the coffins are in play. Klaus is strong-arming to get them, and they have no choice but to hand them over. Damon sneakily removes a dagger from Elijah. This is dagger number 1 that remained in Elijah's chest at the end of season 2. He removes it and keeps it. So that dagger's now with Damon.
Before Damon does that, and Klaus's 4 siblings are all currently daggered, and there's a sealed coffin whose nature we don't really know.
Yes.
We have to assume that there are at least 4 daggers that exist at this point, and possibly a 5th one in the sealed coffin because we don't really know what's going on there.
Exactly. And that's if you don't count the dagger Michael came with.
Oh yeah, so the dagger Michael came with, that's the one that's in Rebecca right now.
Yes.
Yeah, then there's the one that Klaus pulled out of Rebecca at the start of season
Exactly.
3. Okay, so at least 5.
At least 5 daggers are in play right now.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So Elijah's running circles around Klaus, doing this whole social engineering thing with him and the Salvatore brothers. And then at the end of that episode, undaggers the rest of their siblings. The existing dagger that's in Rebecca right now, that's dagger number 3, dagger number 4, which is in Finn, and dagger number 5, which is in Cole. All 3 of those taken out. And so that whole thing plays out. They're all like, Klaus, you bastard. And they each stab him with the dagger, or maybe one of them does. I like to think they all did.
I think Rebecca and Finn do.
Okay. Following that, seemingly, Klaus gets to keep all the daggers.
Also, Esther comes out and we now know that she was a preserved witch and therefore there was no dagger in her.
So 5 daggers, 1 is with Damon, and the remaining 4 are with the originals, we'll say. But it seems like they just let Klaus keep them because they're trying to be a family again. In episode 15, when the originals are linked together, Damon and crew, I think it's Rick who does it, they use that dagger to dagger Cole to try and drop all the originals. Klaus shows up, because again, they don't work on him, he's perfectly fine, and pulls it out of Cole and says, that's also mine again, thank you. So the originals now have all 5 daggers. Episode 20, when Esther is possessing Rebecca. Now this one almost confused me, but then I realized she was just in the Michelson free-floating mansion, so she just grabbed one of Klaus's 5 daggers.
Yeah.
It's not a new dagger. She gets a dagger to dagger Rebecca's body so that she can jump out of that and into her own body. Klaus then later removes it from Rebecca because, again, he's not a monster. He's okay with his sister enjoying some time in the sun right now. And so that's where we end with season 3, with these 5 daggers all being in the original's hands, specifically Klaus's hands. Season 4, less action with the daggers, but it's very curious. Klaus, in episode 4, brings Rebecca back. He's like, listen, I'm tired of you and your... No, this is not the Eurotrip era. What is Rebecca doing at this stage of the game? Oh, she's just being a high school student.
She has had a falling out with Klaus because he faked his death and didn't tell her. And then when he showed up, he saved Caroline and not her.
Yes.
And then at the end, he wanted to leave town with his remaining human Elena blood. She was annoyed that he still valued his doppelganger blood over her.
Over her
and then
and the
she
family.
smashed his, she popped his blood bags.
Yes.
And therefore left him without any more doppelganger blood. And then he snapped her neck.
Yeah, that would piss me off too. But, you know, it takes a lot to have Rebecca be permanently mad at that man. So, episode 4, when he invites her to the free-floating mansion, she shows up. I guess with the allure of Stefan, which is also a weak spot for her. But anyway, they get to talking about the 5. And this is where we start learning through flashbacks and through discussion that these daggers that are always floating around weren't created by broadly witches who were involved with the originals. In fact, a descendant of the witch who was kind of around when this vampire stuff was beginning. The Witch of the 5.
Who never gets a name.
That is her legal name. Yeah, it's written down in the census.
First name, the second name, witch, surname of the 5.
Of the 5. Old-timey name. It's a family name.
When she briefly lived in the Netherlands, she was the witch van der Vijf.
This is Crusader times. This is 100, maybe 100 plus years after the originals have been made. We see a flashback, absent of everyone else, so it's just for our sake, of the Witch of the 5 standing with these 5 crusaders who have these big-ass swords. They each have a sword, as it turns out, not just the one guy who's the main guy. And that's the other interesting thing, too, is that when she's casting the spell, she's casting it on their swords. The daggers aren't in the flashback, I don't think. But, point being... She apparently made these daggers as she was making this Brotherhood of the 5 that was going to set out and hunt down the originals and, by extension, get rid of vampirism entirely. Also maybe deal with Silas, unclear. And so that's where these daggers are from. At the end of this, once he's gotten the information from Rebecca that he needs, which is where the main Brotherhood guy who she was in love with is buried because they need a sword, which has the map to the cure for vampirism. Klaus is like, Rebecca, now that you know, you're a liability to me and I need to keep this hush-hush. So the dagger, one of the 5 daggers, goes into Rebecca. Episode 9 of the season, Rebecca is just found by April Young. I don't know where this is, because I don't remember.
I think she's in a cellar. I don't know if it's the Lockwood cellar or a Salvatore cellar. There's a lot of cellars in this town. We know the Forbeses have one. I think it's the Lockwood cellar.
How does she get in there?
It's not locked.
Who's not locking that thing? It's got Rebecca's body in it.
Because obviously it's because she hears Caroline talking about it when she's on the phone. And then Caroline's like, okay, anyway, now that I'm done with the urgent conversation, I compel you to forget, but she's wearing the vervain bracelet that Jeremy gave to her.
Okay.
And then I guess she wanders down because all she hears is Rebecca's body is still in the cellar, I guess the Lockwood cellar. So I guess she goes there thinking she's going to find her murdered high school circle friend. And then she's like, oh my gosh, this dead body in a coffin that looks like it's decaying because it's, gray and veiny. I guess
and
let me
she
yank out this dagger.
Let me pull out this dagger and disturb the crime scene. Okay. She's insane, I guess. What am I gonna do? But she pulls out the dagger and Rebecca wakes up. And so Rebecca now has a dagger with her. 1 with Rebecca, 4 with Klaus. Episode 11, Cole has found out that there's shenanigans going on about the cure for immortality and Silas, and he's here to stop anybody from being able to get to that shit because he knows it's dangerous. This is when I forget who pulls it out first, but Rebecca pulls the dagger.
It's Rebecca. Cole is like, okay, bye, agree to disagree. And as he turns around, Rebecca pulls out the dagger and pokes him in the back with it. And he's like, really? Is this who we are? Is this what we represent? Daggering each other like Klaus? And Rebecca's like, hey, man, if it has to be this way, it has to be. And he's like, okay, I bet. Pulls out the white oak stake and gets ready to permanently kill his little sister.
So crazy. Insane. God, that family's so dysfunctional. 1,000 years old. I believe she keeps the dagger after trying to dagger him, and he just runs off. Episode 12, and this stunned me because I didn't remember it. Apparently, Cole steals the rest of the daggers from Klaus.
What?
All of them.
That does feel like something that happened.
For sure.
That if what episode is this?
Episode 12.
I feel like I did hear that, oh yes, naughty little Cole has absconded with the rest of Klaus's daggers, which I guess means Rebecca still has one.
Yes, Rebecca kept the one that's on her. She then gives it to Stefan. Where it goes from Stefan, I could not remember.
I feel like if the daggers spend too long outside of the possession of a Michelson, they just disappear.
They cease to exist.
Or they teleport back to some, like, holding place that they will always return to. There's some magic system that works like that. I just can't think of what it is now. Where something will always, like, return to this specific
Something
spot.
always returns to... Yo-Yo, her power works like that.
Nah, it's not a person. It's either like an object or like a...
Riptide from Percy Jackson, Anaklusmos.
Maybe
always
it's
returns
Riptide.
to him.
Yeah, yes, it always returns to his pocket.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. Thank you.
Of course, gotcha. I may have not done my full due diligence with the Stefan dagger, but as far as I understand it, she gives it to Stefan, and this is as they're going on the Amazing Race journey. So I can't think of a single time where they would use that dagger following that.
I mean, Silas is playing with everyone's minds at that point. He might have just stolen it from
He
someone
might
whose
have
mind he
taken
read.
it. That's true. He might.
He's
be
doing
playing
a
around
lot
with
at
it
that
later.
point.
But the more concerning thing to me is that Cole then dies in this episode, having stolen 4 daggers, and they're just fully out of play at that point.
And then the problem becomes that now 2 of the Michelsons and 3 of the 6 originals in general are dead. So even if all of them are daggered at a certain point, we don't even know how many daggers exist and how many spares are left over.
Right. And here's the thing. And we're going to put in a spoiler warning at this point for people who have not seen the originals, because we're going to try and work out how these things fanned out into the originals. So if you've seen the originals, keep going. If you haven't, I'll put a timestamp for any discussion that happens afterwards, and you can skip to that, but also watch the originals. Presumably, because the daggers come back in the originals, it's because Cole gets brought back by Esther in his new body, Daniel Sharman, and then just goes to the place where he hid them and is like, I have them again.
No, I think it's...
Oh, no.
Wait, maybe? So are the daggers not there in season 1? No one uses the daggers.
In my head, they're back when Nate Buzz comes back. I don't remember Daniel Sharman using them.
No, because Daniel Sharman is in season 2, and he goes to Davina and is like, let me teach you Kemia. We'll turn this string
Is
into
it
a gold
from
necklace.
then? You're so right.
Yes.
You're so right.
He's
I
like,
thought it
let
was
me
Nate
turn
Buzz.
this little string or whatever into a gold necklace.
Right.
So that we can practice turning a silver dagger that I have apparently had stashed away since the 1900s.
So that's
into
the
a
thing.
gold dagger.
Because it's
And then
not
it's like,
any of
wait.
the ones he's stolen. It's a new dagger. So this is dagger number 6, if not 7, because we have not resolved the superpositional dagger.
Which then means that if it's 7, then it's like there's more daggers than there were original vampires.
Yes.
Even when Klaus's hybrid nature was sealed away. And even if there's 6, there's like, okay, well, there's more daggers than you could use because they don't work on Klaus. But maybe you didn't know that when you were making them.
And then it's like the Witch of the Five was making them for these 5 crusaders, so you'd assume she'd make 5 daggers.
Yeah.
But I guess if the needs basis is how many originals need to be daggered, then maybe they'll just have like an extra one on them. Where did Cole get it?
He plagiarized one, which would be insane to plagiarize one out of silver when you know it doesn't work on Klaus.
Yeah, it's like, what are you hoping to gain there? So there are 6 or 7 daggers actually in play over the course of the universe. Maybe there's another one in Legacies. Who knows?
Oh gosh, I hope not. Especially since the originals aren't supposed to be main characters in that.
Right. Now that I'm thinking, no, because he was specifically riding with like Arab witches. He didn't have anything to do with the Gemini, seemingly.
No.
In my head, I was like, if he got it from a prison world, that's the only thing that would make sense to me.
That would be lovely. I would allow that.
That would solve
nonsense.
all our problems, because you could copy that shit as much as you want. Well, not as much as you want. There's only 2 prison worlds. And then a third one, which, would also copy, because they all exist at the time they make the prison world that Kai is in.
Yes.
But yes, the one he's apparently stashed for however long, they use this thing called the Paragon Diamond, which I actually was very interested about all the alchemy stuff that they were doing, because that's always like interesting esoteric stuff. And I'm glad that they credit where it comes from, because that is all from like Arab / like Middle East, or rather Southwest Asian like origin. Like those are the people who were doing pioneering stuff when it comes to science and maths and alchemy and all that stuff. But they use this thing called the Paragon Diamond, which I guess is a focus for like this type of magic that Cole is doing, and they turn this stashed silver dagger into a gold dagger, which apparently solves for the issue of the silver daggers don't work on Klaus, and they use it to dagger him.
Insane that no one ever thought to do that before Cole.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that, as season 2 initially tells us before the universe seems to present a different argument, I have to imagine that the Michelsons, the originals, were just shrouded in so much mystery and rumors and fantasy that some people just didn't know these daggers existed at all. So there was no one who would know that, oh, these daggers exist, but they don't work on Klaus. Because it just seems insane that with the number of enemies he'd made and the number of witches he'd pissed off in 1,000 years, and the fact that this is a pre-existing alchemical practice that Cole was then like, oh, I'm going to use this. I didn't invent it. I just thought, let me use this. No one thought, let's turn this dagger into any other metal. On
because
which the magic can still work.
The gold is arbitrary. Clearly the silver was the issue. Turn it into aluminium, or aluminum, as Cole would say, and just use that. Fascinating. But yeah, a number of characters. This is the thing where I'm like, the stashed daggers, other characters get the daggers. Like, excluding this golden one. I know that a couple of characters in the originals have had the daggers, so it's like, why are we talking about a stashed one from 1900 whatever if Cole's the one who stole them from Klaus and then was brought back to life? Surely he'd be like, and then grab my 4 daggers that I stole. I don't know.
They were really just hoping we'd forgotten where the daggers were as we crossed over into the new show.
Yeah.
Some of us are neurotic. We don't.
This is why I'm like, God, the best job to have would be to be like the lore keeper for a show you're really invested in.
I will say, once the golden dagger is used on Klaus, and it is effective, it's used on Klaus when he is somehow connected to Aunt Dahlia. So in daggering him, they also neutralize her and place her into some sort of coma-like state. However, her magic is able to work even from within the unconscious state of mind that she's existing, and she melts the dagger
Nice.
as it sits in Klaus's neutralized body. So that dagger is now gone. At least one of the daggers, however many existed, is destroyed.
Okay, well, the only weapon that we had against him. But he's the protagonist now, so I guess that's okay. Yeah, the wiki doesn't say anything about what happens to that dagger that was with Stefan. But it does say the status of the daggers is that 3 are owned by Rebecca Michelson. Assumedly, this is by the end of the show. 1 is owned by Elijah Michelson. 1 is owned by Davina Clare. That's the one that's melted. So that's the golden one. 1 is owned by Cole Michelson. And then in brackets it says unknown. Not sure what that means. And 1 is owned by Klaus.
Because everyone's confused about that one.
So
When Cole comes back as Nate Buzz in his original body, and he's been cursed, like the resurrection has been tampered with, and now he's got this like craving to murder Davina because of the mean ancestral witches. Does he get daggered in order to put him down? Because I know he ends up killing Davina anyway, so maybe...
Oh, I forgot.
Maybe he did get daggered and then they pulled it out. Like the witches just telekinetically removed, because they were doing a lot.
They were doing a lot. They have so much influence, those ancestral witches. It's crazy. I honestly don't remember, largely because I didn't care about Cole and Davina's relationship, so I checked out sometimes when they were on screen.
I cared about those daggers. If you had asked me this in like 2017, I could have told you exactly where each of those daggers was supposed to be.
Fair.
At least. It really just feels like whenever someone needs to dagger a Michelson, it's like, aha, look what I found. It's like, how?
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. But yeah, that's all she wrote about the daggers, I guess.
I love that in the very season in which they are introduced, already the waters are muddied. There's some
Yes.
discrepancy with how many can exist at a time, because it's like Elijah's just goes into oblivion and Klaus has one in Alaric's house. It might be different if they were somewhere else, but Klaus walks into Alaric's house, a house which, by the way, I must point out, watching that scene the other day, Elijah enters without being invited. Like, don't know how he did that. He's never been there. I don't think the gang ever meets there.
Wait,
because
where's
it was very
Alaric's
much-
house? I know he has an apartment.
Well, his apartment, sorry, I meant to say, where his dwelling place that Klaus has taken up shop in, that Catherine has been trapped in, and I don't think the gang is ever there with Catherine. A big deal is made of Alaric having to be there to invite Damon in when Damon is like, hey, Catherine, I'm going to give you Vervain, and then you're going to do something for me. You're going to help us against Klaus. Stefan shows up when he needs to bargain for Damon's life for this cure for a werewolf bite. I don't know how he gets in. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's so strange. Because I was going to be like, maybe because it's a rental, so he doesn't own the apartment, so that would make sense. But his name's on the lease. And that would still mean whoever owns the apartment would need to invite you in. And also, it's not about who owns it necessarily, it's about who lives there, right?
Yeah.
Well, that
Wild.
varies also.
Plot holes.
Yeah, but like from day one, it's like, oh, already unclear as to what's the nature of this thing, and it's already being contradicted, which is a shame because it's a really cool artifact. It's a really interesting tool. The lore behind it is cool for as much as it doesn't get as much play, or the person who created them doesn't get as much play, rather. I mean, I got no further thoughts. That's Daggerwatch, baby. Just like WrestleMania, you're there to watch like one of the three fixtures and then that's it.
If we ever end up covering the originals and our minds are refreshed as to what exactly happens in that
We
show,
can get into much more detail as to like, where did these things go?
Daggerwatch Part 2.
Daggerwatch Part 2, baby. Daggerwatch
New Orleans edition.
2K27 conditionally. It depends. But yeah, until then, I guess, or ideally until the next episode that comes out now, please stay with us. Don't abandon us for the next Daggerwatch. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you have any questions, queries, or thoughts, please mail them to animalattackpod@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at animattackpod. That's at ANIM Attack Pod. You'll find our link tree in the bio that has all our online stuff. From us, it is goodbye until the next one. Cheers.
Bye.